I'm Roshmeen Azam. Thank you for joining us for this deeper dive into the strengthened aged care quality standards as the November reforms approach. Now, reflecting on our last webcast, these elements stand out. Firstly, that the strengthened aged care quality standards are not simply an update to compliance requirements. They mark a strategic shift towards a more accountable, person-centered model of care that reshapes the way services are delivered and, more importantly, the way services are experienced. It sets the direction for a new era of care, lifting the bar and embedding dignity, accountability, and safety at the core of care that truly reflects the needs and rights of older people. Second, building workforce capability is essential. From critical thinking to communication to shared decision making, policies alone won't deliver quality care. However, confident, skilled teams will. And thirdly, leadership sets the tone. Providers should implement role-specific training, prioritize targeted upskilling, and establish a learning culture that embeds clinical excellence, accountability, and measurable quality outcomes across every level of care. In today's webinar, we move beyond the what and why of the standards to the how, sharing practical strategies and lessons learned in real care environments. And to assist with unpacking the challenges and opportunities aged care providers are encountering, we are joined by a very special guest. He is one of Australia's most respected leaders in aged care with nearly 4 decades of experience. He has held pivotal roles, including CEO of Aged and Community Services Australia, and now leads a successful consultancy offering strategic guidance to organizations navigating the complexities of aged care reform. He also chairs Meals on Wheels Australia and Meaningful Aging Australia, and serves on the New South Wales Ministerial Advisory Council on Aging. His deep experience in the sector makes him a trusted voice in shaping the future of aged care reform. I'm sure many of you know who I'm talking about. Welcome, Paul Sadler.
Thank you very much, Roshmeen.
Now, a number of us are holding our breaths for the 1st of November as the new Aged Care Act comes into force. It replaces the 1997 Aged Care Act, a framework widely criticized for being outdated and insufficiently focused on the rights and dignity of older Australians. The new Act represents a fundamental shift. Now, Paul, what are the new elements of the Aged Care Act 2024 that addresses some of the 140 recommendations of the Royal Commission? And do you feel there is greater accountability for providers with the reform?
So the first thing to say is the new Act does start on the 1st of November, which is around a week away from the time we actually broadcast this, but it applies ongoing after the 1st of November. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that everything we'll be discussing today will be the obligations that apply to providers and their staff after that time. So I'll just outline what some of the key elements of the new Act are, and then come back to your question about the accountability that providers have under the new Act. So the first thing to say is the new registration process is implemented by the new Act. So currently, if you're an approved provider under the existing 1997 Act, it's a once forever exercise. Under the new Act, providers will need to be registered every 3 years. Secondly, the Commonwealth Home Support Program, which is currently excluded from the 1997 Act's remit, are actually brought in under the new Act. The new Act is based around, as Roshmeen said, the rights of older people. So the Statement of Rights is actually in Chapter 1 of the new Act, Section 23, if you want to look it up. And it's at the core of how the new Act will operate. Chapter 3 of the new Act identifies and brings together all of the provider obligations. So your obligations for things like compliance with standards, with the Serious Incident Response Scheme, complaints processes, etc. They're all listed in Chapter 3 of the new Act. There are some targeted steps the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission can take if a provider breaches their obligations under the Act. There are expanded civil and indeed some criminal penalties that can apply under the new Act. There's a new statutory duty of care which is outlined. And of course we have the strengthened aged care quality standards that will apply. There's a particular focus on First Nations people and the cultural sensitivity of delivery to those people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. So the Act isn't a one-size-fits-all. It does recognise those particular sensitivities for some of the communities to which we provide aged care services in Australia. So you can see that the structure of the Act does contain within it a series of obligations and accountability for providers.
That's a great synthesis of a number of documents, and guidance tools that are out there. So thank you. And I love that reference around one size fits all. It's also great to hear that for approved providers, accountability now extends beyond the organisation to governing bodies, to staff, to contractors as well. That's fantastic. Now, a key call out from the Royal Commission was for improved consumer rights and safety. How have organisations been preparing for the new standards?
So the first thing to say is that the new standards themselves are based on the Statement of Rights. So what does the Statement of Rights cover? Well, firstly, it covers the independence, autonomy, empowerment and freedom of choice of the older people using our aged care services. It talks about the right to equitable access, the right to have quality and safe funded aged care services, respect for privacy and information, person-centred communication and an ability to raise issues without reprisal, and the right to have access to advocates, to significant persons in the older person's life, and to maintain social connections. Now, maintaining social connections is obviously critical for people in residential care, but it also absolutely applies to people who live in their own homes and receive aged care services at home, because we know so many older people living at home become socially isolated. So, as I said, the new standards place the older person at the centre of the system, and visually that's represented by the Commission through a circle, with the centre of the circle being Standard 1, the individual, and then the other 6 aged care quality standards sit around the older person at the centre. This is how the standard describes the expectation statement for older people around Standard 1. I have the right to be treated with dignity and respect and to live free from any form of discrimination. I make decisions about my funded aged care services with support when I want and need it. My identity, culture and diversity are valued and supported, and I have the right to live the life I choose. My provider understands who I am and what is important to me, and this determines the way my funded aged care services are delivered. So then the Standard 1 goes on to articulate 4 different outcomes. So these are the key areas the standard's looking for providers to achieve. The first of these outcomes is person-centred care. The second outcome is dignity, respect and privacy. The third is choice, independence and quality of life. And the fourth area is transparency and covering the service agreements, which are an obligation under the Act for providers to enter into with older people. So I want to give just one example that brings to light how providers are actually responding to this. And the example is the area of supported decision making. So there is a new concept introduced by the new Act, which is supported decision making. So this differs from the existing role of substitute decision makers, which is the approach taken by the 1997 Act. So under the existing Act, the older person can nominate a representative for them, and in certain circumstances that representative can make decisions on their behalf. Under the new Act, the emphasis is on representatives transferring to become supporters of the older person, and the emphasis is on supported decision making, supporting the older person wherever possible to make their own decisions, big or small. And the role of providers is firstly to assist those supporters to understand what their new responsibilities and roles are under the new Act's provisions. But secondly, to make sure that staff understand how supported decision making operates, how to get beside older people and help them to exercise their choice. So to do that, you have to balance their dignity of risk, understanding what the risks of the choices that older people are making, and how you balance that exercise of choice and dignity of risk with the duty of care that the service provider still owes to the older person. So that is just one example of some of the key decisions which sit around Standard 1.
That was great, and particularly the clarification around the concept of supported decision making. I think that is very crucial as we move forward from 1st November onwards. I guess that sort of provides guidance to the organisations. What is your advice specifically for care staff in preparing for the new standards for 1 November, and more importantly, beyond that time? Because it doesn't, as you say, it doesn't stop. You know, the preparations don't stop at 1 November. We cannot put down the pen and sit back. It's an ongoing model of care. And I guess the follow-on question then that comes to mind is, what protection does the Act offer these individuals?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say to all staff is make sure you know and understand the standards and how they operate. So that is an obligation on everybody who works in the aged care system, whether you're a registered nurse or an allied health professional, whether you're a care worker, whether you work in the kitchen or the laundry. Everybody needs to understand how the standards operate and what the expectations are. Secondly, know the scope of your professional practice and operate within that scope. That is important for registered nurses, enrolled nurses, allied health professionals who have a professional scope of practice. But it's also important for direct care workers, for the ancillary staff, to understand what their role is and how they can be acting consistently with the aged care quality standards. If you're a registered nurse or a team leader, you have a particular responsibility to be a clinical or team leader in the workplace. So understand what that leadership role actually looks like. Then there's a responsibility around reporting incidents or missed care, any concerns in the workplace, and know your reporting obligations under the Serious Incident Response Scheme. When it comes to the duty of care, there are, in the statutory duty of care section, there are some protections for people who follow the steps I've just outlined, and they, if there are concerns raised, they can defend themselves based on having acted consistently with those steps.
Thank you for unpacking that. I absolutely agree. Whistleblower protection is a key part of building a culture of safety and trust in aged care. By protecting staff who raise concerns, we're not only keeping our residents safe, but also supporting a workforce that feels empowered to speak up without fear. And that's the kind of environment I feel makes quality care tangible. Now, reining in from your extensive experience in the sector, what are you seeing with the move from compliance-driven practice to a genuine culture of quality and safety? And is there momentum out there?
So the first thing to say is the reality facing aged care providers at the moment is there are 650 pages of a new Aged Care Act. There's another 650 pages of aged care rules that were only promulgated recently. That's 1,300 pages worth of legislation you have to get to know. Then there's thousands of pages of additional departmental and commission guidance materials, program manuals, etc., etc. So providers have to be focused on compliance. Compliance, if you like, is the minimum entry point into the aged care system. So unfortunately, with 1st of November only a week away, naturally providers are focused on making sure they're meeting these new obligations. But what I would say to everyone is don't forget the key thrust of the legislation, the central place of the older person at the centre of the aged care system, at the centre of the aged care quality standards. So to actually do that means you've got to focus on the quality of the care you're providing and ensuring that it is being delivered in a safe manner. So that culture of quality and safety that you outlined, Roshmeen, is critical and is ultimately the main point of the legislation.
1,300 pages?
Just a small amount.
I've gone through the documents, but I hadn't done the maths. So thank you, Paul. And you raise an interesting point, that compliance is the minimum point of entry into aged care. So compliance readiness becomes a very critical part of this journey. Now, where do you see the biggest challenges or risks in meeting the new Act and standards by 1 November?
The first really significant challenge is understanding those 1,300 pages of legislation and the thousands of pages of rules and guidance material and so forth. So that's posing a major challenge for providers. As you view this, you've got a week left. But the Commission and the Department have been making the point that the 1st of November is just a date. And whether you're looking at this a week before the 1st of November or a week after or a month after, what we're talking about today is still going to be relevant for you. So that issue of how you're meant to behave, how you're meant to comply, how you're meant to meet the intent and thrust of the legislation to put older people at the centre of the system is still going to be true. A second major challenge, though, with a week to go, is have you explained to everybody what the changes actually are? So everybody needs to know what the changes are and how they're going to apply to them. So there are around 400,000 staff members. There's thousands of volunteers. There's 1.3 million older Australians who use aged care services, and there's all their families, carers, friends who will need to understand the new aged care system and how it's meant to operate. So, have we communicated clearly with everybody is the challenge. With staff, make sure that they're, the training that you have undertaken has been in place. Altura Learning has had some useful sessions. I recorded back in June some sessions for Altura Learning on the Statement of Rights and on the new Support at Home program. Altura Learning's been running other events. There's been staff training made available by the department, by the Aged Care Quality Safety Commission through the Alice platform. Providers have been running their own training. So it's one thing to have made sure all staff members have had the training once, but there will be new things to learn, there'll be issues to unpack. What are you doing about making sure there's refresher courses in place? The other point I'd make is around the communication with older people themselves and their families. So everybody under the legislation is going to require a new service agreement or an amendment to their existing service agreement put in place. So particularly this will be a challenge for the Support at Home program. You have to have that new service agreement in place by the 1st of November. But there are some exceptions to this. The Commonwealth Home Support Program, for example, they have a 12-month period of time to make sure that service agreements are in place for existing clients. So that's 835,000 older Australians. So it's a big job to get service agreements to all of those people, but we've got a year to do that. But the negotiation of the service agreement does provide the opportunity to discuss with all of the older people receiving services what the changes are and how they will affect older people.
So from what I am hearing you say, one of the biggest challenges will be embedding the standards into everyday practice. I think it is one thing to meet the rules on paper and another to ensure that teams have the skills and confidence to consistently deliver safe, person-centered care. This is why I believe quality, role-specific training and support is critical in the days leading up to 1 November, but also, as you mentioned, Paul, ongoing refreshers. That becomes critical in reinforcing the learning. And finally, Australia's ageing population is growing rapidly and living longer with multiple health conditions. These require more complex care. Now, the strengthened standards aim to ensure that care is best in practice, responsive, and safe. With increased scrutiny and demands for greater transparency, the reform is designed to restore public trust in the aged care sector. Now, the question I have for you, Paul, is, are we there yet?
And the honest answer is no, we're not, Roshmeen. The reputation of the sector, absolutely took a hit with the media coverage of issues in the sector in the lead up to the Royal Commission, then the Royal Commission itself uncovering some pretty bad stories of a lack of care within the aged care system. And then, of course, we had the COVID pandemic hit with all of the challenges that brought. So the media perception, the public perception of aged care was probably at an all-time low. I do believe that has improved somewhat in the last couple of years, and in part because of these reforms and the promise of a new Aged Care Act, including its focus on the human rights of older people. But any public perception improvement is still, relatively speaking, at the margin so far. So the bottom line is we all need to keep working on improving the aged care system in Australia, and that remains a challenge to everybody listening today.
It is really exciting to hear, Paul, that we are taking steps in the right direction. I think our intention should be to have an aged care model that is first in class, but it will still require a lot of effort on our part to get there.
That's right. I mean, obviously, we want to aim for the highest quality care that we can provide. And the new Aged Care Act has a definition of what high quality care should look like. But the reality is we'll always fall short of that. We're human beings, there will be shortcomings in our service delivery, mistakes will be made. And that's why it is so important to have a continuous improvement culture that underpins all of this. So that continuous improvement is actually a requirement, is one of the obligations on providers. So I would encourage everybody who is watching this to take on board that aim for high quality care and to have a continuous improvement approach, which includes learning from things that go wrong.
And on that note, Paul, I would like to thank you for taking your time to share your insights on challenges, opportunities, and practical strategies in the real world.
Thank you, Roshmeen.
The aged care reform represents an exciting cultural shift towards care that is truly person-centered, values-driven, and rights-based. As we approach 1 November and the rollout of the new Aged Care Act, each of us has a part to play in the transformation. Change on this scale is never easy, but it is an extraordinary opportunity to rebuild trust, strengthen relationships, and to ensure that every older Australian experiences the dignity, safety, and respect they deserve. Together, as we prepare for the reform, we are shaping the future of aged care, one that puts the individual first every day. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to continuing this journey with you.